The sea doesn't scream, it whispers. And in those whispers, danger hides. Sharks don't announce their presence, they strike like sudden, silent storms, fast, final, and unforgiving. One moment you're gliding through calm waters, the next you're in a violent blur of instinct and survival. These moments aren't cinematic, they're chaotic, primal, and terrifyingly real. From sudden strikes in shallow surf to deep-sea hunts gone wrong, this video will explore 6 chilling shark attack stories that prove the ocean is as deadly as it is beautiful. Cape Town, South Africa, 2010. The waters off Gansbaai, a small fishing town 2 hours from Cape Town, had long been known as Shark Alley, due to the dense population of great white sharks that patrolled its depths. The area had transformed from a quiet fishing village into a tourism hotspot during the early 2000s, with dozens of companies offering cage diving experiences to thrill seekers wanting close encounters with the ocean's apex predators. The practice was controversial among marine conservationists, who worried that the constant baiting altered natural hunting patterns and potentially increased risks for humans and sharks. Valery Serova, a 28-year-old Russian social media star with over 5 million followers across platforms, had built her brand on luxury and danger. Valery, the daughter of a Moscow telecommunications magnate, showcased a life of private jets, designer fashion shoots in exotic locations, and increasingly daring stunts that kept her engagement metrics climbing. Her signature catchphrase, "Life without risk isn't living," appeared beneath every post. Her management team had recently signed a 7-figure deal with an extreme sports drink company that required regular adventure content to satisfy the contract terms. When Valery announced her intention to live-stream a cage-free dive with great white sharks, her publicity team tried to dissuade her. Her diving instructor, Hendrik van der Merwe, reportedly warned her that free diving with great whites fundamentally differed from the controlled cage experiences tourists offer. Valery dismissed these concerns, noting that similar stunts with tiger sharks in the Bahamas had doubled her following the previous year. The production crew reluctantly agreed to proceed with the condition that safety divers would remain just out of frame during the broadcast. On June 17, 2010, Valery's chartered boat anchored in the infamous waters between Dyer Island and Geyser Rock. The morning was overcast, creating low-visibility conditions that the boat captain, Willem Stassen, later testified had concerned him enough to suggest postponing. According to crew interviews, Valery refused any delay, citing the scheduled live-stream announcement that had already generated nearly 1 million waiting viewers. The production team began chumming the water an hour before the broadcast. When Valery entered the water in her branded wetsuit, 4 great whites had been spotted circling the area. Marine biologists later noted that the shark's behavior showed signs of what experts call excited feeding patterns, characterized by quickened movements and frequent direction changes. 23 minutes into the live stream, Valery, narrating her experience to her audience while maintaining a respectful distance from the nearest shark, the largest great white, estimated at 4.8 meters, suddenly changed course. Viewers watched in horror as the predator accelerated toward Valery without the typical investigatory bumping behavior that often precedes attacks. The shark struck with such force that Valery was dragged beneath the surface immediately, her scream cut short as the broadcast continued to capture bubbles and thrashing water where she had been moments before. Safety divers entered the water within seconds, but the shark had disappeared into deeper water with Valery. The live stream continued for another 47 seconds before a crew member turned it off, but by then, more than 2.3 million viewers had witnessed the attack in real time. Fragments of the wetsuit and a single torn diving fin were recovered over the next hour, but despite an intensive 3-day search involving the South African Navy and Coast Guard, Valery's remains were never found. The investigation that followed cited multiple protocol violations. The boat lacked proper shark spotting personnel, used excessive chum, and allowed swimming during known hunting activity. Van der Merwe later revealed that Valery had specifically requested the safety divers stay farther back than standard procedure dictated to maintain the authenticity of the solo dive narrative. The tragedy sparked international debate about extreme content creation and wildlife interaction ethics. The following year, South Africa's tourism ministry implemented stricter regulations for shark diving operations, including mandatory cage use for all recreational divers and limitations on chumming practices. Valery's parents established the Serova Marine Safety Foundation, which funds research into shark behavior and advocates for responsible marine tourism. Her final live stream, though removed from official platforms, continues to circulate on darker corners of the internet, despite ongoing efforts to have it deleted. In a particularly grim epilogue, the energy drink company that had sponsored Valeri attempted to use modified clips from her final dive in promotional materials 6 months later, triggering public backlash and eventual bankruptcy after a successful lawsuit from the Serova family. The incident remains one of the most publicly witnessed shark attacks in history. It is a cautionary reference in discussions about the dangers of prioritizing social media engagement over personal safety. Marine biologists point to the case when explaining that even experienced divers cannot predict the behavior of apex predators, particularly in waters altered by human feeding activities. Honolulu, Hawaii, 2015. Locals have long respected the waters off Oahu's North Shore for their unpredictable currents and diverse marine life. Hawaiian mythology speaks of these seas as the domain of Kanaloa, the god of the ocean, who demanded reverence from those who entered his realm. By the early 21st century, the area had become a critical training ground for the U.S. Coast Guard's most elite rescue swimmers, who practiced recovery operations in conditions that mimicked real-world emergencies. Lieutenant Evan Hall, a 32-year-old rescue specialist with 8 years of service, had completed over 200 training dives in Hawaiian waters. Evan, the son of a Navy SEAL and an emergency room nurse from Annapolis, graduated at the top of his class and earned a reputation for remaining calm under extreme pressure. His commanding officers had recently recommended him for advancement to training coordinator, citing his methodical approach and commitment to safety protocols. On September 12, 2015, Evan's team conducted a simulated helicopter rescue operation approximately 3 kilometers off the North Shore. The exercise involved recovering weighted dummies from a submerged training apparatus designed to mimic a downed aircraft. Weather conditions were optimal with clear visibility and minimal swell, though satellite data later revealed an unusual warm water current had shifted into the area overnight. Training logs indicated that at 10:43 a.m., Evans signaled completion of his recovery portion and began ascending to check his equipment before the next phase of the exercise. His diving partner, Chief Petty Officer Marcus Riley, had moved approximately 20 meters away to secure a loose tether on the training apparatus. Unbeknownst to the Coast Guard team, a local fishing vessel named Ka Pilikai had been operating in adjacent waters earlier that morning. The boat's waste disposal system had malfunctioned, releasing approximately 40 pounds of fish, remains and entrails into the surrounding waters. Ocean current patterns had carried this biological matter directly into the training zone, creating what marine biologists later described as a feeding stimulus cloud that extended through the water column. As Evan reached his mid-water checkpoint at approximately 15 meters depth, a 4-meter female tiger shark, later identified by its distinctive markings, emerged from deeper water. According to Riley's official statement, there was no circling behavior or investigatory approach. The predator moved with singular purpose, striking Evan across his upper back and left shoulder with such force that the impact was audible through the water. The initial bite severed muscle tissue and fractured Evan's scapula, releasing a significant blood plume. Training Officer Lieutenant Commander Aisha Washington, monitoring the support vessel, reported that surface water visibility deteriorated almost instantly as crimson spread through the blue. Responding to Evan's distress signal, Riley employed his emergency bang stick, a specialized underwater firearm for precisely such scenarios. The percussive blast temporarily deterred the shark, creating a 20-second window during which Riley and secondary support diver Petty Officer Jesse Torres secured Evan with a rescue harness and began emergency ascent. Medical logs from the support vessel documented severe tissue damage extending from Evan's left deltoid region across his trapezius muscles to his spine. The bite had missed his carotid artery by less than 2 centimeters, a margin that attending physician Dr. Lauren Kikoa later described as the difference between a severe injury and a fatality. Emergency medical protocols were implemented immediately, with pressure bandages applied and intravenous fluids established before helicopter evacuation to a medical center. Surgical teams worked 7 hours to repair the damage, requiring 12 pints of transfused blood and over 400 sutures. The medical report noted that while the shark's teeth had caused extensive soft tissue trauma, they had remarkably spared major nerve clusters that would have resulted in permanent paralysis of the left arm. The Coast Guard investigation that followed identified multiple contributing factors. The proximity of commercial fishing to military training zones was highlighted as a primary concern, along with inadequate communication between maritime operations and shared waters. The report also noted that the team's shark deterrent devices, sonic emitters designed to create an uncomfortable sensory experience for approaching predators, had been operating at reduced capacity due to battery degradation. Evans survived but faced 18 months of intensive rehabilitation. The incident resulted in major protocol revisions for all Coast Guard diving operations, including mandatory daily surveys of local fishing activities, enhanced wildlife deterrent systems, and the implementation of real-time biological matter sensors on all training apparatus. In a development that surprised his medical team, Evan returned to limited diving duty in late 2017, though never again in open ocean conditions. He accepted a position as a training instructor at the Coast Guard facility in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, where he incorporated his experience into safety briefings for new rescue swimmers. The tiger shark, identified by its scar patterns as a known resident female nicknamed Makani by local researchers, continued to be spotted occasionally in North Shore waters but was never again associated with human interactions. Marine biologists used tracking data from the incident to enhance predictive models of shark behavior in response to sudden introductions of biological attractants, research that has since been incorporated into standard maritime safety guidelines throughout the Pacific region. Guadalupe Island, Mexico, 2008. Located 240 kilometers off Mexico's Baja California peninsula, Guadalupe Island emerged as a premier destination for great white shark observation in the early 2000s. The island's isolation and pristine waters created an ideal natural laboratory for studying these apex predators, with underwater visibility often exceeding 30 meters. By 2008, several specialized tour operators had established seasonal expeditions, allowing researchers and adventurous tourists to observe sharks from the presumed safety of submersible cages. Alina Mirova, a 33-year-old Ukrainian-born marine biologist with dual Canadian citizenship, has dedicated her career to changing public perceptions of sharks through documentary filmmaking. After completing her doctorate at a university in British Columbia with a thesis on predator conservation ethics, Alina has produced award-winning films showcasing shark behavior in natural contexts. Her work has been featured on international nature channels, and she earned the prestigious Oceanic Heritage Medal in 2007 for advancing marine conservation awareness. On October 23, 2008, Alina joined the research vessel Carcharodon for what was scheduled as a 14-day filming expedition. The project, funded by the Global Marine Conservation Initiative, aimed to capture unprecedented footage of great white hunting patterns for an upcoming documentary series. Expedition logs noted optimal conditions that morning: water temperature at 19 degrees Celsius, exceptional visibility and moderate current. The submersible cage deployed for the expedition had been in service for approximately 7 seasons. Maintenance records later obtained by investigators revealed that the welding along the lower port quadrant had been flagged for reinforcement during the previous year's inspection, but had received only temporary repairs due to budget constraints. The expedition leader, Dr. Magnus Thorensen, reportedly expressed concern about the cage's condition, but ultimately approved it after additional bracing was added to the upper sections. At 11:37 a.m., Alina entered the cage for her third dive of the day. 2 research assistants, Paulina Vega and Soren Lindstrom, monitored from the surface while underwater cameraman Theo Nakamura filmed from a secondary cage 5 meters away. According to the expedition protocol, small amounts of tuna chunks were dispersed to attract sharks to the vicinity, but not directly to the cages. 22 minutes into the dive, an unusually large female great white, later estimated at 5.2 meters based on video analysis, approached the primary cage. Digital logs from Alina's underwater camera recorded her excitement at capturing what she described as classic investigatory behavior as the shark made a slow, deliberate pass. The encounter changed dramatically when a larger tuna piece drifted closer to the cage than intended. The shark made a sudden, powerful turn and accelerated toward the bait. Rather than veering off as typically observed, the predator collided with the lower section of the cage precisely at the compromised weld point. The impact stress caused catastrophic structural failure, opening approximately 70 centimeters wide. Later analyzed by marine safety experts, Nakamura's footage showed the shark's momentum, carrying it partially into the cage. In the confined space, the animal thrashed violently, its jaws clamping onto Alina's torso in what experts described as a stress response rather than predatory behavior. Blood immediately clouded the water as Alina was pulled against the damaged section of the cage. Surface crew members initiated emergency protocols within seconds. Dive master Julian Cortez entered the water without protective equipment and managed to release the emergency flotation system that brought the damaged cage to the surface. Despite their rapid response, the injuries Alina sustained proved catastrophic. The medical examiner's report documented severe trauma to her vital organs and major blood vessels, indicating that death had likely occurred within moments of the initial bite. The investigation that followed identified multiple systemic failures. The cage's maintenance record revealed a pattern of postponed repairs and quick fixes that had compromised its structural integrity. The bait dispersal system also lacked sufficient directional control, allowing attractants to drift too close to the observation platforms. Perhaps most critically, the emergency response plan had not been adequately updated to address catastrophic cage failures. The incident sent shockwaves through the marine research and shark tourism industries. The Mexican government temporarily suspended all cage diving permits around Guadalupe Island while implementing new safety standards, including mandatory annual equipment certification, increased cage strength requirements, and strict limits on baiting practices. Alina's final footage, recovered from her underwater camera, contained remarkable observations about shark social dynamics that she had documented moments before the attack. Her research team made the difficult decision to include selected scientific portions in the documentary, renamed Mirova's Legacy, while withholding the tragic final moments. Her parents and colleagues established the Alina Mirova Foundation for Responsible Marine Research the following year. The organization now funds innovations in protective equipment for marine researchers and advocates for sustainable observation practices that minimize wildlife disturbance. In a poignant tribute, the research community named a newly identified great white shark observed near Guadalupe Island in 2010, Alina. The female shark, recognizable by its distinctive dorsal fin pattern, continues to be monitored as part of ongoing population studies, embodying the conservation work to which Alina had devoted her life. San Clemente Island, California, 2011. Positioned 75 kilometers off the Southern California coast, San Clemente Island had served as a U.S. Navy training facility since 1934. The island's isolated location and diverse underwater topography made it ideal for naval exercises, particularly sonar testing and maritime response drills. The surrounding waters, part of a convergence zone where cold northern currents met warmer southern flows, created an ecosystem rich in marine life, including seasonal populations of great white sharks that migrated through the channel waters. On April 17, 2011, a 6-person crew from the Naval Undersea Warfare Center was conducting routine tests of a new mid-frequency active sonar system designed to improve submarine detection capabilities. Lieutenant Commander Rajiv Patel led the team aboard a 7-meter rigid hull inflatable boat designated Poseidon III. Weather conditions were optimal with light winds and minimal wave activity, though water visibility was limited due to a recent plankton bloom. The test protocol involved deploying sonar arrays at varying depths while measuring acoustic reflection patterns. According to mission logs, the team had completed 3 successful test runs and was preparing for a 4th, when sonar operator Petty Officer Dominique Westbrook reported an unusual reading approximately 30 meters from their position. The signature was initially registered as geological, possibly a submerged rock formation, but it demonstrated movement inconsistent with known patterns. At 14:22, Ensign Zachary Thornton spotted a large dorsal fin circling the vessel. The officer on deck, Lieutenant Melissa Cortez, ordered immediate cessation of sonar testing and directed the crew to maintain observation positions. Marine wildlife encounters were common in the area, and standard protocol dictated non-interference unless safety was compromised. The shark, later identified through video analysis as a mature female great white approximately 5.8 meters in length, initially maintained what marine biologists term investigatory circling, a behavior typically observed when these predators encounter unfamiliar objects. The situation escalated at 14:27 when the shark abruptly changed course and rammed the starboard side of the RHIB with considerable force. The impact, recorded by the vessel's mounted cameras, temporarily elevated the port side approximately 40 centimeters out of the water. After a brief retreat, the shark returned, executing a more powerful strike against the hull. This collision created a partial breach scenario, lifting the RHIB nearly 70 degrees from its horizontal position and ejecting 2 crew members into the water. Petty officers Marcus Delgado and Tyler Washington found themselves approximately 4 meters from the vessel in water, which was later measured at 17 degrees Celsius. Lieutenant Cortez immediately initiated man-overboard protocols while Chief Petty Officer Sandra Okafor prepared rescue lines. According to witness statements, Delgado began swimming directly toward the extended rescue equipment. At this critical juncture, the shark changed focus from the vessel to the displaced sailors. The predator accelerated toward Delgado and struck from below, its jaws clamping onto his lower back and left hip. The force pulled him underwater for approximately 3 seconds before he resurfaced, visibly injured and struggling to remain afloat. Okafor, trained in emergency response, deployed the RHIB's acoustic deterrent system, specialized equipment that emits concentrated sound pulses designed to overwhelm sensitive shark sensory organs. Simultaneously, Lieutenant Cortez fired a marine flare into the water near the interaction zone, creating a disorienting light-sound combination that marine experts later credited with interrupting the attack sequence. The disoriented shark retreated temporarily, creating a 20-second window during which Washington reached the rescue line and secured a harness around the injured Delgado. The team executed a rapid retrieval, bringing both sailors aboard despite the RHIB's compromised stability. Medical logs documented that Delgado had sustained a bite wound approximately 47 centimeters in diameter, with significant tissue loss from his lower lumbar region and gluteal muscles. Lieutenant Commander Patel immediately radioed for emergency evacuation, while Okafor, who had combat medic training, applied pressure dressings and administered emergency plasma. A Navy SH-60 Seahawk helicopter arrived within 18 minutes and airlifted Delgado to Naval Medical Center San Diego, where he underwent 9 hours of reconstructive surgery. The incident investigation determined that the sonar testing had likely produced frequencies that mimic the distress signals of the shark's natural prey, potentially triggering its aggressive response. The tested equipment operated within a range that overlapped with the biological sonar used by various marine mammal species that great whites occasionally hunt. Experts theorized that the shark had initially interpreted the sonar pulses as injured prey, then redirected its predatory focus to the sailors when they entered the water. The Navy subsequently implemented significant protocol changes for open water testing operations, including mandatory shark spotters during all Pacific exercises, enhanced biological monitoring before deployment of sonic equipment, and upgraded personal protective gear for all personnel on exposed vessels. Delgado survived but faced a 2-year rehabilitation process. He later received the Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal for his composure during the incident, which training officers incorporated into maritime emergency response curricula at the Naval Special Warfare Command. The shark, identified through distinctive scarring as a known channel migrant, nicknamed Goliath by local researchers, continued its northward migration pattern and was documented off the coast of Central California the following month. It exhibited normal behavior with no further unusual human interactions. Progreso, Yucatan, Mexico, 2013. The coastal waters of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula had long been celebrated for their crystalline beauty and rich marine biodiversity. The small port city of Progreso, with its distinctive 7-kilometer pier stretching into the Gulf of Mexico, had transformed from a sleepy fishing village into a popular destination for ecotourism and water sports. Local maritime tradition held that these waters were sacred to ancient Maya seafarers, who performed rituals before journeys to appease the ocean deities who controlled the currents and creatures of the deep. By 2013, the annual Brazada por la Esperanza, Stroke for Hope, charity swim, had grown into a significant regional event, drawing participants from across Latin America and the United States to raise funds for children's cancer treatment. The 20-kilometer open water course paralleled the coastline, with safety boats and kayak spotters positioned regularly to monitor swimmers. Rachel Hammond, a 42-year-old triathlete and pharmaceutical executive from Boston, had registered for the event as part of her quest to complete marathon swims on every continent. The mother of three had discovered endurance swimming in her mid-30s as therapy for recovering from a serious car accident and had since completed 14 major open water events. Friends described her as methodical and safety-conscious, known for extensively researching water conditions and marine life before every competition. On March 23, 2013, 217 swimmers entered the water at Progresso's eastern beach under ideal conditions. A light offshore breeze, a temperature of 23 degrees Celsius, and excellent visibility. According to the event tracking system, Rachel maintained a strong pace through the first 12 kilometers, positioning herself among the top 30 participants. Her distinctive neon green swim cap made her easily identifiable to the safety team, who monitored her from kayaks to small motorized vessels. Unknown to race organizers and participants, 3 fishing boats operating approximately 4 kilometers offshore had discarded fish entrails and processed waste into the Gulf waters for 18 hours. Local investigators later discovered that the vessels, registered to a commercial fishing operation based in Sicily, had experienced refrigeration system failures and had improperly disposed of spoiling catch rather than returning to port. Ocean current patterns had gradually shifted this biological material toward the swimming course, creating what marine biologists term a chum slick that extended invisibly beneath the surface. At the 14-kilometer marker, Rachel was positioned approximately 60 meters from the nearest safety kayak when spotter Alejandro Fuentes observed a sudden disturbance in the water behind her. Event communications logs recorded his radio alert at 11:47 a.m., reporting what he initially described as unusual water movement near participant number 142. Witnesses would later describe the attack as explosive and without warning. A large bull shark, estimated at 3.3 meters, breached the surface directly behind Rachel, striking with such force that she was pulled underwater immediately. The initial bite targeted her upper back and right shoulder with catastrophic force. Safety diver Carlos Mendoza entered the water within 40 seconds, but reported that visibility had deteriorated rapidly due to blood dispersal. Despite the quick response of 3 safety team members who reached the location within 90 seconds, Rachel had sustained injuries incompatible with survival. Medical examiner Dr. Elena Vasquez documented massive trauma to the thoracic region, with severed major blood vessels indicating that consciousness would have been lost within seconds of the initial strike. The following investigation revealed multiple contributing factors that created a perfect storm scenario. Analysis of local fishing vessel GPS data confirmed that illegal dumping had occurred along a path that intersected with currents flowing directly toward the swim course. Additionally, March represented the beginning of bull shark migration season in the Gulf, a factor that event organizers had noted in safety plans, but had considered low risk based on historical data. Perhaps most critically, interviews with local fishermen identified that the 2013 unusual bull shark behavior was observed throughout the Yucatan coast, with specimens appearing closer to shore than typically observed. Marine biologists later connected this behavioral change to unusually warm water temperatures that had altered the distribution of smaller prey fish. Local authorities immediately responded by suspending the fishing licenses of the vessels involved in the improper waste disposal and implementing stringent new regulations for all commercial fishing operations during public water events. The Yucatan Tourism Board canceled all open water swimming competitions for the remainder of the year, while conducting comprehensive shark population surveys. Rachel's husband, Dr. Timothy Hammond, worked through his grief by establishing the Rachel Hammond Foundation for Water Safety. Since then, the organization has funded improved shark monitoring technology for public beaches and training programs for emergency response teams throughout Latin America. The Foundation's signature achievement came in 2016 with the development of a rapid deploy underwater drone system that allows safety teams to assess subsurface conditions before and during open water events. In a solemn ceremony 1 year after the tragedy, Rachel's family scattered her ashes from Progreso's pier, honoring her love for the ocean despite its ultimate betrayal. The annual swim was reinstated in 2015 under a new format that includes mandatory enclosed swimming lanes for the full course and advanced sonar monitoring for large marine predators. Local dive operators now include Rachel's story in their safety briefings, emphasizing how even experienced swimmers must respect the unpredictable nature of the ocean environment. A small memorial plaque at the Eastern Beach starting point bears the inscription, "The sea gives life and demands respect," a reminder of Rachel's passion for open water and the inherent risks of entering wild marine environments. What made Rachel's case particularly notable among marine biologists was the unusual hunting behavior displayed by the bull shark. Dr. Martina Ortega studied the incident extensively for the Institute of Marine Sciences. She published a groundbreaking analysis suggesting that the shark was likely conditioned to associate human swimming patterns with feeding opportunities. The illegal dumping from fishing vessels had created what Ortega termed a behavioral bridge, a situation where normal predatory instincts were redirected toward human activity through repeated stimulus association. Her team's research revealed a troubling pattern. In the 3 months preceding the attack, at least 5 local fishing operations had routinely discarded processing waste in protected waters, often coinciding with morning hours when recreational swimmers were most active. Satellite tracking of known bull shark populations in the area showed significant shifts in their movement patterns during this period, with increased coastal activity during times that correlated with fishing vessel operations. This research ultimately contributed to Mexico's strengthened marine protection laws, which now impose penalties of up to 5 years imprisonment for commercial waste dumping in designated recreation zones. The Hammond family's advocacy work expanded beyond water safety to address the underlying socioeconomic factors contributing to the tragedy. Timothy Hammond collaborated with local fishing cooperatives to develop sustainable practices that protected marine ecosystems and human livelihoods. By 2018, the foundation had established a microloan program that helped 12 Yucatan fishing operations upgrade to modern refrigeration systems, eliminating the economic pressure to dump spoiled catch. The program also created a community-based shark monitoring network that employed former fishermen as conservation officers, transforming potential adversaries into partners for marine protection. During the 5th anniversary memorial service in 2018, Progreso's mayor announced that reported incidents of illegal dumping had decreased by 87% since these initiatives began, while sustainable fishing yields had increased through improved practices. Rachel's youngest daughter, Sophia, who had followed her mother's passion for marine conservation, unveiled a specialized drone system that would patrol the swim course during future events. Technology funded entirely by local businesses whose owners had witnessed how responsible tourism and marine protection could coexist productively. Brothers Islands, Red Sea, Egypt, 2017. Rising from depths of over 800 meters, the Brothers Islands, known locally as El Acahuén, stood as twin sentinels in the middle of the Red Sea, approximately 67 kilometers from Egypt's eastern shoreline. These remote outcroppings had earned legendary status among the global diving community for their pristine coral formations, vertical drop-offs, and exceptional marine biodiversity. By 2017, their relative isolation and protected status had preserved an ecosystem largely untouched by mass tourism, attracting experienced divers seeking encounters with pelagic species rarely seen near more accessible reefs. Lena Kowalski, a 36-year-old Polish-Canadian marine photographer based in Vancouver, had built her reputation documenting threatened ocean ecosystems across 5 continents. After earning degrees in marine biology and visual arts from a university in Dalhousie, Lena transitioned from academic research to conservation storytelling, with her images appearing in prestigious publications and international exhibition spaces. Her signature technique involved capturing intimate moments between species in their natural habitats, often requiring significant time alone with her subjects. On September 3, 2017, Lena joined the live-aboard vessel Nefertiti for a specialized photography expedition to Egypt's offshore marine sanctuaries. The 10-day itinerary focused on optimal lighting conditions for underwater photography, scheduling dives during what professionals call magic hour, the periods of shifting illumination at dawn and dusk when sunlight creates dramatic effects through the water column. The expedition log noted that Lena had completed over 2,000 logged dives, placing her in the vessel's highest experience category. The third day of the expedition brought the vessel to the Brothers Islands during ideal conditions. Minimal surface chop, visibility exceeding 30 meters, and gentle currents around the Western Islands pinnacle. Dive briefing notes emphasized that the site was known for occasional visits from oceanic white-tip sharks, particularly during early morning hours when the predators often transition between hunting depths. At around 6:38 a.m., Lena entered the water with 4 other photographers, including her frequent diving partner, Xavier Beaumont. The group descended to 27 meters and began photographing along the reef wall according to the planned route. Approximately 40 minutes into the dive, the team encountered a hawksbill turtle feeding among coral outcroppings. According to Beaumont's statement, Lena signaled her intention to follow the turtle briefly for specialized shots, while the others continued documenting a school of barracuda nearby. This momentary separation, estimated at less than 30 meters, placed Lena slightly deeper and farther from the reef wall than the main group, where the sloping reef transitioned to open water. Her dive computer, later recovered intact, recorded that she had maintained proper depth and air consumption rates throughout this period. The situation changed without warning at 7:24 a.m. Beaumont heard a disturbance and turned to see Lena engaged in what he initially thought was an equipment adjustment. Within seconds, he recognized that an oceanic white-tip shark, approximately 2.5 meters long, had seized her camera rig with its jaws. The force of the bite had also connected with her right shoulder and upper arm, creating an immediate cloud of blood in the water. The shark, displaying what marine biologists call test bite behavior, released its initial grip and began circling Lena at close distance. Beaumont immediately activated his emergency signaling device, a specialized underwater strobe that alerts all divers in visual range to an urgent situation. The dive leader, Mahmoud Salah, responded within seconds, bringing the team into defensive formation around Lena, who remained conscious but was clearly in shock. As the group began a controlled ascent toward the surface, the shark returned twice, making close investigatory passes at Lena's fins before the combined effect of the divers' defensive postures and their emergency air bubble releases finally drove it away. Throughout this critical phase, Beaumont maintained physical contact with Lena, supporting her injured side while Salah monitored their ascent rate to prevent decompression issues. The team reached the surface approximately 4 minutes after the initial bite. Dive Safety Officer Karim Naguib had prepared the vessel's emergency medical station based on the surface bubbles and distress signals. Lena was conscious but rapidly deteriorating from blood loss when lifted aboard. The vessel's physician, Dr. Fatima Hassan, applied pressure tourniquets and administered emergency plasma, while Captain Ahmed Rafiki initiated immediate evacuation protocols. The Nefertiti maximized speed toward the Egyptian mainland while maintaining satellite communication with medical authorities. Approximately 90 minutes after the incident, a military helicopter intercepted the vessel and airlifted Lena to the specialized trauma center at the International Hospital in Hurghada. Medical records documented extensive damage to Lena's deltoid muscle complex and multiple lacerations to her upper thoracic region, requiring 7 hours of microsurgery and over 300 sutures. Remarkably, the bite had missed major arteries by millimeters, a circumstance that trauma surgeon Dr. Amr El Sayed described as the narrow margin between a serious injury and a fatal one. An investigation by the Egyptian Chamber for Diving and Water Sports determined that several factors contributed to the rare attack. The early morning timing coincided with active feeding periods for oceanic whitetips. At the same time, Lena's brief separation from the group had placed her in a vulnerable position between reef and open water, a transitional zone where predators often patrol. Additionally, her professional camera housing with its extending arms and strobes may have presented an unusual silhouette that triggered investigatory behavior. Lena survived but needed 16 months of rehabilitation to regain partial mobility in her right arm. During her recovery, she used her experience to develop the widely adopted solo safety protocol, which is now standard in professional underwater photography training. The guidelines emphasize maintaining visual buddy contact even during specialized shooting situations, and recommend specific positioning to minimize predator interest in camera equipment. In a development that surprised the diving community, Lena returned to underwater photography in late 2019, though with modified equipment and strictly within group contexts. Her subsequent work, including an award-winning series titled Reef Shadows, incorporated her changed perspective on marine predator behavior and the delicate balance between observation and interaction in wild environments. Following the incident, the Brothers Islands dive sites implemented enhanced safety measures, including mandatory shark spotters during dawn and dusk dives, and stricter enforcement of buddy system protocols for all experience levels. The oceanic whitetip population around the islands continues to be monitored through a non-invasive identification program, partially funded by proceeds from Lena's photography exhibitions. During her 16-month rehabilitation, Lena discovered that her experience had created an unexpected platform for marine conservation messaging. While traditional shark attack narratives often cast the animals as villains, Lena instead developed the Respectful Distance Initiative, an educational program aimed at professional underwater photographers. Through webinars and articles published in specialized diving publications, she emphasized how subtle changes in photographer behavior could significantly reduce negative wildlife interactions. Her analysis of her attack revealed a pattern common among professionals. The pursuit of perfect images often led to unconscious boundary crossing with wildlife. By examining footage from cameras mounted on other expedition members, researchers identified that Lena had unknowingly positioned herself between the oceanic whitetip and its exit route to deeper water while pursuing the turtle. Combined with the early morning timing when the shark's hunting drive was most active, this positioning created what marine behavioral scientists now call a misinterpreted territorial challenge. The educational materials developed from this analysis have since been incorporated into certification requirements for professional underwater photography permits in marine sanctuaries across 22 countries. The physical aftermath of the attack transformed Lena's artistic approach in unexpected ways. Unable to manipulate camera equipment with her dominant hand for several months, she began experimenting with left-handed shooting techniques that ultimately evolved into a distinctive new style. Her post-recovery work featured what critics called vulnerability perspective, compositions that position the viewer as the observed rather than the observer in marine environments. One particularly powerful image, eye contact, captured an oceanic whitetip shark from below, its silhouette framed against rippling surface light, conveying the animal's beauty and inherent power without sentimentality or demonization. This photograph, which required Lena to work with a specialized assistant who could intervene if necessary, earned the prestigious Wildlife Photographer of the Year award in 2020. During her acceptance speech at the Natural History Museum in London, Lena spoke about finding reconciliation with both her physical limitations and her complex relationship with the species that had nearly taken her life. To understand predators, she noted, we must first understand that they are responding to us as elements in their environment, not characters in our story. This perspective helped reshape public discourse around shark encounters and inspired a new generation of conservation photographers to approach their subjects with heightened awareness of behavioral boundaries.